crisp on the outside while still being soft and chewy on the inside. I present to you the perfect chocolate chip cookie. For me, the perfect chocolate chip cookie should have crisp edges and a soft center that is gooey when hot and chewy when cool. And the flavor of the cookie dough itself should not just be one-dimensional. A perfect balance of vanilla, brown butter, sea salt, and chocolate will make eating a chocolate chip cookie a magical experience. To get started making this magical cookie, you'll first need to make some brown butter. So place a saucepan over medium heat and add in 165 grams of unsalted butter. For this step, it would really help to use a light colored saucepan so you can better monitor the browning of the butter. Eventually, after the butter has melted, it will begin to bubble and you will start to hear crackling and sizzling sounds. This is the water being evaporated out of the butter. And once all of the water has evaporated, the milk solids in the butter will begin to brown. When all of the water is finished evaporating, you will no longer hear any popping or crackling sounds, and this is when you really need to start paying attention. The butter will start foaming and the milk solids will start to brown rather quickly. Reduce your heat to medium-low and continue stirring, scraping down the sides if you see any brown butter building up. So how do you know when your butter is finished browning? Well, there are 3 things you can look out for. As you stir your butter, look at the bottom of the pot for golden brown specks. But it's going to be pretty likely that your butter is quite foamy, so another thing you can watch out for, or in this case smell for, is a strong nutty aroma that will fill your entire kitchen. Trust me, you won't miss it. And the last thing to watch out for is that if the foam is starting to die down, it's pretty likely that your butter is finished browning. Because by the time all the foam dies down, those delicious golden brown specks will have turned into black specks. So let's try to remove the butter from the heat before that happens. So in my opinion, the best way to tell that your brown butter is done is just to use your nose. So when you smell that strong, nutty, delicious aroma, turn off the heat and place your pot into a bowl of ice cold water. Stir your pot for about a minute while it's in the bowl of ice water so all the butter can cool down evenly. After your butter has cooled down, you can remove it from the bowl, and you don't want to leave it in there for too long because the butter will start to solidify. And after removing your pot, add back in 25 grams of water. This small amount of water is important for the final texture of the cookie and keeping the cookie soft. Transfer the brown butter to a mixing bowl, really making sure to scrape down the pot to not leave any delicious brown bits behind. Then add in 105 grams of white granulated sugar, 210 grams of dark brown sugar, 15 grams or 1 tablespoon of vanilla extract, and 6 grams of kosher salt. Mix all of the ingredients together until well combined. And now if you're thinking about reducing the amount of sugar, don't. If you want your cookie to be less sweet, I'll show you how to do that later with the chocolate. When all of the ingredients are well combined, add in 1 large fridge cold egg plus 1 egg yolk. And then set a timer for 1 minute and whisk vigorously. This is going to incorporate air into the mixture, the same way that we would get if we were creaming butter and sugar together. And one great thing about using melted butter in this case is that it isn't as good as holding onto air. So this means that we don't have to worry too much about over aerating the mixture like we would if we were using softened butter. As you whisk, the mixture will become lighter in color, and it will also become quite thick. So thick in fact that it will have a hard time dripping off the whisk. When finished whisking, set your bowl of wet ingredients aside, and then in a separate bowl for your dry ingredients, add in 280 grams of all-purpose flour and 1 teaspoon of baking soda. Whisk everything together for about a minute so that the baking soda is well incorporated into the flour. Add your flour to your bowl of wet ingredients, followed by your choice of chocolate. You can keep it traditional with regular old chocolate chips, but if you really want to make your cookies special, chop up some premium bar baking chocolate. So why even bother with using bar baking chocolate? Well, one of the advantages to using bar baking chocolate is that it doesn't contain any extra ingredients that prevent the chocolate from melting down entirely into the cookie. And another advantage is that when compared to chocolate chips, where every single piece of chocolate is the exact same size, with chopped chocolate, you're going to have some pieces that are big and others that are small. And this is going to make every bite of your cookie unique because each bite is going to contain a different amount of chocolate. So if you want your cookies to taste less sweet, you can do that by using a higher cacao percentage chocolate. I'd recommend going as high as 70% cacao. But I find that 60% cacao strikes the perfect balance between bitter and sweet. 50% or semi-sweet is also great too. For your chopped chocolate, you're going to need 2 4-ounce bars. And also when chopping your chocolate, it's super important that you use a really sharp knife because otherwise a dull knife could easily roll since the chocolate is so hard. Take your time chopping your chocolate, cutting it as thick as you would like, but I find that about a fingernail's width to be perfect. When you're finished chopping your chocolate in one direction, turn your cutting board to cut your chocolate an equal width in the other direction. Use a bench scraper to scoop up your chocolate and place it in the bowl with your other ingredients. Mix all the ingredients together using a silicone spatula till there are no longer any dry pockets of flour and all of the chocolate is well distributed throughout the dough. Cookie dough that sticks to your hands like glue can take away some of the fun away from making cookies. So there should be just enough flour in your dough so that the cookie dough pulls away from your hands during shaping. And because we added an extra egg yolk, the cookie's still going to be tender and fudgy, the same way adding extra butter would, but without making it excessively sticky. When you're finished mixing your cookie dough, transfer it into a zip seal bag, or you can just cover your bowl and place it directly in the fridge to chill for 4 hours, but overnight is best. This is going to give time for the flour to hydrate and more importantly, chill our dough. Chilled dough will allow our cookies to bake thicker, not run into each other on the sheet pan, and also it'll give us a slightly underdone center that is gooey when hot and chewy when cool. Your patience have paid off and now it's time to bake. Cover your baking tray with a sheet of parchment paper. To portion out the cookies, use a large number 16 or 2-ounce cookie scoop, making sure to really pack the dough into the scoop. This number 16 scoop will allow us to get the largest cookies possible while still being able to fit 6 cookies per tray. If you do not have a cookie scoop, each ball of cookie dough should weigh about 80 grams. And if you don't have either a cookie scoop or a scale, you can just eyeball it aiming for about a 1/4 cup's worth of dough. Shaping the cookie dough into large golf balls works okay, but I find that the center of the finished cookie tends to be a little too underdone for my taste. Instead, I find that it's better to tear the balls in half and then smush the bottom of the halves together to form a crude version of the shape you would get from using a cookie scoop. With this shape, the finished cookie will have more crinkly and crispy edges, and the center will be just perfect. And check it out, my hands are actually quite clean after handling the cookie dough. Space out your cookies so that there's a large gap between each cookie and a small gap between the cookie and the edge of the pan. And one last thing to do before we put these cookies in the oven is to sprinkle them with a little bit of salt. The extra salt is really going to help with balancing out all of the fat and sugar in the cookie. The flaky salt is going to be a little more expensive, but it does go a long way in helping your cookie look and taste better. You can use normal kosher salt, but the added crunch from a nice flaky salt is quite nice. Sprinkle a pinch of whatever salt you happen to have over the top of your cookies. And if all the salt happens to land in one spot, then I would recommend picking up some of the flakes and spreading them out. Sometimes when you sprinkle your salt, it doesn't like to stick to the cookie. In this case, I'd recommend just picking up a couple flakes and placing them in any spots that seem bare. When you're finished sprinkling your salt, your cookies are ready for the oven. And one quick thing, don't forget to put your cookie dough back in the fridge between batches. Place your tray on the center rack of an oven that has been preheated to 375 degrees Fahrenheit using the convection setting if you have it. and then bake your cookies for 13 to 14 minutes or until the outer edge is golden brown and you see just a little bit of browning on the top. Leave your cookies on the sheet tray for 1 to 2 minutes before transferring them onto a wire rack to finish cooling down. If you leave the cookies on the sheet tray for much longer, they will dry out and the bottoms will become hard. If there was only one recipe in the world that needed a cooling rack, it's chocolate chip cookies. The cooling rack allows the cookies to cool off quickly, keeping the exterior crisp and the interior nice and soft. While it might be really tempting to eat a cookie soon after you take it out of the oven, I really recommend that you wait until the cookie is just ever so slightly warm before eating. This gives time for the interior of the cookie to set, but the chocolate is just warm enough that it melts in your mouth when you take a bite. So I really hope you're able to use this recipe as a base for creating your own version of the perfect chocolate chip cookie. And if you give these cookies a try, as always, I would love to hear what you think down in the comments. And if you want to learn how to make other desserts, be sure to check out my desserts playlist. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you all in the next video.
Oh my god, never had a cookie this good. So freaking good.